You're going the wrong way in terms of the circle.
I am. Thanks for that. Thanks for that correction. Alrighty, welcome to Gaming the System, the only channel coming to you from the unusual and unexpected intersection of gaming and theology. I am your host, Caleb Allen, also known as Kip88 in the Xbox realm, and I am joined by my co-host, Ryan Somerville, or Blank Bird. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself?
Pretty good, pretty good. So, for the sake of transparency, we'll go ahead and let our dear listeners know why we are addressing the same topic as we have already covered once before. And that's because my recording file got screwed up. The beauties of starting a stream without knowing exactly what you're doing. So, by the way, we got bad guys up ahead at 300 on your little radar thing.
Well, in that case, people are going to see that not only do we not really know what we're doing in terms of a streaming podcast, or at least this element of the podcast, they're going to see that we really don't know what we're doing in terms of gaming, period. So
True.
I'm start off with that.
Hey, it's always good to
on that foot.
to have like everything laid out in the open. We wouldn't want people to think we are trying to deceive them.
Yeah.
Alrighty. I solve them this way. Okay, so going back to our previous discussion, so this channel will be focused on, I guess you could say in some ways primarily theology, with gaming as a way to kind of cut the tension. Theology is a very heavy topic, especially when you're not theologically inclined. So that can be quite the task for where are you going?
I'm going to die. That's where I'm going.
Clearly, we're both probably gonna die. We're so close.
Yeah, you said cut the tension. It sounds to me like more or less you're saying cut the boredom.
Well, I mean, to a degree, you and I, and people like us have the advantage of studying theology and doing that because we enjoy it. Some might consider that more of a curse than a blessing, but we thoroughly enjoy it and enjoy the challenge that comes with learning how to apply Tango here. Learning how to apply that theology so that it's not merely a bunch of head knowledge.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you got that guy or if I sniped him real well, but either way.
Combination of both, I think. Or are you getting that green one?
I'm getting the green assault rifle.
Okay. Okay, so when it comes to theology, there are, historically anyway, there are two possible ways of going about theological study. The first, in some ways, I think it would be you can make a case that it's the oldest method of studying theology, and that being systematic theology. the oldest organized method that way.
Right.
So it's one that has been used throughout the ages. It's tried and true, so to speak. But then you also have biblical theology, which is relatively newer. It still comes to us prior to the Protestant Reformation. We got another bad guy.
Let me scope him if I can find him. Has he seen him? Because I've got a sniper rifle.
Directly northwest. They're building walls.
Yeah, I see that.
And there's another little building almost directly north, or directly north.
I missed. Oh, that's alright. Oh no, I didn't miss.
Did you knock them out?
Not yet. I'm going to, though. If it wasn't for the fact that this takes forever. Are you rushing them? They just built a wall while they're trying to heal you.
Where are they at?
They're behind all that wallage. There they are. More wallage. Sorry, folks, but we gotta do
I have no idea how to use that C4. None whatsoever. How I
Yep.
feel.
Oh, we both died. That's alright, we both died, so now we can stop boring our listeners with our actual gaming. The terrible nature of it.
I think we did better than last
So
time.
you're talking about like systematic theology being the oldest way to organize. So really what we're talking about is organizing principles, right? So we have the organizing principle of systematic theology and the organizing principle of biblical theology. I don't remember last time, did we talk about what the heart of those two organizing principles are? Like, what is the organizing principle of biblical theology? What is the organizing principle of systematic theology? I think we may have, but I don't remember. Perhaps we should briefly rehash.
Yeah, I think we may have. However, it wouldn't hurt to go ahead and rehash it. So, hop to it.
You're the host. I'm only the mere meager co-host.
True. Okay, so define for us real quick what is biblical theology, and go ahead and ready up whenever you feel so inclined.
Well, biblical theology is basically following God's special revelation in a progressive fashion. That is, you start in Genesis and use Genesis moving forward to learn about who God is, his nature, his attributes, his mighty works, his wonderful works, moving forward as you go through the Bible. So it's the idea of doing your theology sort of in the order that it is laid out for you in terms of the books of the Bible, the chronology of Scripture. So that's biblical theology.
Who was a major proponent of biblical theology?
Well, when you're talking about modern terms, or perhaps who people would most readily associate it, it would be Gerhardus Voss, who wrote a book called Biblical Theology that was sort of groundbreaking in his context and has been influential in the science ever since. So Gerhardus Voss would be who you would most associate with it in terms of ushering it into prominence.
All right. Systematic theology would be a way of looking at theology, according to its head of doctrine or its specific doctrine, and then compiling the various passages in Scripture that speak to that particular doctrinal issue. So while biblical theology goes from Genesis to Revelation, by the way, we're jumping at Tomato Town, so that's a ways away.
All right.
Systematic theology is really more of a I had a word that I wanted to use and I lost it. It's a go ahead and jump. It's a gathering of resources, pulling of text from all parts of the Bible because of a single uniting focus, and that being whatever doctrinal issue you're studying.
Right. Yeah, that's a fair definition. So one is topical and one is more I don't want to say exegetical because that's not necessarily the case, but one is more topical, and one is more just merely following the natural flow of Scripture itself. So it's not really associated with topics.
Correct. What would you say are pros of biblical theology versus systematic theology?
Well, a pro of biblical theology. Hey, go ahead.
Nah, I changed my mind.
All right. Yeah, a pro of biblical theology, lies primarily in the fact that it's organic. It takes Scripture
Hey, come
in
over
its
here.
actual place
Come over here.
for what it actually reveals at that particular, place in Scripture.
You want a rocket launcher?
So that's the primary benefit of it, is that it's organic. It's not taking Scripture and then putting it into a particular paradigm. It's taking Scripture as it occurs and gleaning the truth from it. So I guess I should say it's more whole orb. It's more fulsome. It's more it doesn't lend itself to proof texting in isolation as readily. I mean, anything can be used that way, but as readily, perhaps, as... Oh, I'm getting shot at already. Oh, I died. As readily as... I'm dead, so I'll be waiting for you in the lobby. But as readily as systematic theology. Systematic theology, you're garnering the texts that you're garnering, and you can proof text that way. You can just pick the texts that you want to pick that are related to the head of doctrine and sort of build off of that. Whereas biblical theology, you can still do that, but it's going to be much more. It's going to be harder to do because your whole surrounding context of the verses that you're dealing with makes it a little harder to go ahead and pick and choose what you want to cherry pick proof texts for your particular position if you're angling for
Right. So the strength then, you covered the strength of biblical theology, being it enables you to see any given topic in a holistic way, and seeing really how, I would add to what you said, that you also get to see how a doctrine develops over time. You see, I think there's a misconception, at least the risk of a misconception, again, for modern Christians. And by modern, I really just mean post-New Testament era Christians. And that risk is, let's jump and go to this little motel to the right. That risk is to kind of forget that the saints of old, whether in the New Testament or in the Old Testament, did not have the extent of revelation that we have now. It's not to say that the revelation they had wasn't clear, but we have the distinct advantage of we don't have a canon anymore that is still developing, that's still that God is still revealing Himself through with new revelation. I should qualify that to say God still reveals Himself through Scripture.
Yeah, probably a good thing.
Come back here.
She hunted me down and killed me. She's not finishing me.
Oh,
She's waiting for you.
well now you
She's
tell me.
waiting for you. I didn't realize that what the play was. I just said that she hasn't killed me yet.
Oh man. Okay, so I think we may be prone to forget that while we, in our time, when we become Christian, when we're converted, we have the advantage of having both Old and New Testaments at the same time. So we have complete, God's complete revelation as far as what He is determined to reveal to us in writing, all at once. We don't have to wait for Him to speak through prophets. We don't have to wait for His apostles to write to us. We have all that He's chosen to reveal to us. And where I think that can be a stumbling block is that we forget that the saints of old didn't have that. And so it's understandable then that you would see theology and doctrine being revealed progressively and more fuller as time went on. So that's something it's worth keeping in mind. We don't want to trick ourselves into thinking that the revelation that we have now is the exact revelation that David had or that Moses had. We also wouldn't want to go to the extreme of thinking that God's people of old didn't understand the revelation given to them. I think in as much as was intended for them to understand, they understood. It's another way of saying they weren't dummies. Oh,
Right, yeah.
we got someone in this building.
Which building? I don't think we're in the same place. Yeah, I think that's right. You know, another thing we have, interesting, is forgetting the fact that revelation, and perhaps this is a strength of biblical theology over against systematic theology. It didn't occur in a vacuum. It didn't occur with, just God kind of dropping this down in some sort of classroom, whole cloth. Rather, He actually gave His revelation in the course of life. Just think of Genesis. But God comes to Abraham in his life. He doesn't come to Abraham in the classroom, drop a book in his lap, and say, "Hey, this is my self-revelation." Rather, Abram's life becomes a means by which God reveals Himself. So it's not academic. I mean, it is academic, but it's not. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's part of experience. It's part of life. And I think
It's not-
sometimes.
Go ahead.
And I think sometimes we lose sight of that in our pursuit of the academic side of things, and systematic theology probably is most geared to that, to where we boil down all of God's self-revelation into heads of doctrine that are really quite academic in terms of our study of them, and forget the fact that these were doctrines that were revealed in life,
I don't want
where
that
people
sniper.
were living. You know what I mean?
Hey, hold on. For your sniper.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's it's important to remember that God is a personal God, and He reveals Himself in relationship with human beings. So your point of essentially about it not being academic, in the sense of like it's not. Revelation isn't merely some textbook that we're to study. By the way, if you come across bandages, I could desperately use some.
I have a med box.
Why didn't you tell me?
Here, I just dropped it for you. I didn't know you needed it. So go over where I am. There you go. All right. Yeah. Yeah, we're sitting here talking about the strengths of biblical theology, and I'm almost second guessing whether or not we should be gaming the biblical theology instead of gaming the system. But for the sake of the pun, I suppose we ought to stay with gaming the system.
Well, I mean, the for my part, the reason for by the way, I almost forgot. There you go. The reason for belaboring the point is there are some who have adopted this mentality that biblical theology is inherently wrong. By the way, there's a AR up here.
I have one. Or at least I have a burst one. I suppose it can't hurt to have two.
You'll eat through your ammo faster, but that's really up to you. There's definitely somebody here, because all these doors are open and the houses are looted.
Well, at least there was someone here. But speaking to the attitude, yeah, there is a negative thing. It's because, in reform circles, and we're not the only ones that are prone to this, but this is probably where it hits us the most. In reform circles, there's a weddedness to tradition.
Right.
So systematic theology has its roots in reform scholasticism, and really the Reformation itself, beginning with Melanchthon and the like. When we started to, and Calvin's Institutes, where we start to have a more systematic approach, a more coherent, almost Aristotelian. It's kind of the fruit of Aquinas's labors, though without the Catholic bent. That's been the Reformed tradition. That's how the Reformed have dealt with theology, and biblical theology, is newcomer. The newcomer on the scene, the kid on the block, and we're inherently suspicious of that. Instead of just being rational on certain things, we become wedded to tradition and everything that challenges that tradition. Rather, I should say, we perceive as a challenge, because we can't do the two together, but that we perceive as a challenge to that tradition. We have to attack, we have to align, we have to depict as the work of really pantheists and liberals, when that's just simply not the case.
Right. So that's the reason that I find it important to offer we'll say a good-hearted affirmation of biblical theology. It's important for us to remember that whether it's biblical theology or systematic theology, both have their place. And we shouldn't feel this need to reject one over the other. Hey, there's a slurp up, or a potion up here. Just because some will twist it.
Yeah, absolutely. But then again, so it's good to defend biblical theology and sort of get the idea out there that we're going with systematic theology not because we have a problem with biblical theology, but really because biblical theology systematic theology more readily lends itself to what we're trying to accomplish here. Because as we said in the first session, the first podcast, really biblical theology, just due to its nature, would take forever to really work through. There are bogeys down at this town, by the way. Someone jumping around, and you can see all those ramps just freshly built. So systematic theology just allows us to do this. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where from?
That sucks.
Oh,
I don't even know. Just got destroyed.
He was on top of the roof.
Good night, babe. Oh, sorry for all of you who just heard me tell my wife good night, babe, but you gotta do what you gotta do. But systematic theology lends itself to our format, lets us move, more quickly through doctrines than we would if we did a more holistic approach of biblical theology. And that's really the only reason why. It's not because we think biblical theology doesn't have its place or is bad or not worthy of the time, but it's just not conducive to the format that we have, right?
Right, and on the flip side, it's also not that, given how highly we've been speaking of biblical theology, we view systematic theology the same way, that it has its uses, and it's not to be thrown out the window in favor of biblical theology. We're of the opinion that biblical theology and systematic theology should both be kept indoors and on the shelves and ready to use. They should both be viewed as the treasure that they are, and neither one of them should be cast off as the demonic child of some heretical or apostate religion.
Enlightenment influenced vagabond.
Yes. Now let's go to the mire all the way at that swamp at the far end.
All right.
Okay, so
which actually, go ahead.
Well, no, I'll let you complete your thought.
No, I was segueing to something else, so I had no thought to complete.
So.
Well, segue away. You're the host.
I kind of jumped a little bit earlier than I initially wanted to, but oh well.
We can glide over there.
Yeah.
And while we glide, we can have a nice leisurely discussion of what you're segueing us into.
Yeah, so we've talked then about the pros of biblical theology, and to a degree, the pros of systematic theology.
The town to your right, or the little outcropping to your right with some buildings in it, there's actually a bogey floating down in there, so we're going to have some competition here pretty quick. But anyway,
Okay.
Continue.
I got 2 weapons and a shield.
I have none, but I do have a shield.
There's a shield. Oh, do you have minis or?
Minis.
Okay, go ahead and use yours because I have 2 big shields. I'll take the last mini from you if I can find you. I was running the opposite direction, and then I'll give you one of the big shields.
You see me, right?
Yeah.
So there was someone behind us, so you best be keeping your eye out for what's going on behind us.
Yeah, I saw he built a ramp. A couple. At least one ramp. Where you at? Oh, sorry.
So segue into
so-
into the next.
So, what would you say is, well,
Man, I have no weapons.
historically, none whatsoever.
No.
All right, there's SMG
Yeah.
in here.
Historically, what would I say what?
Well, historically, systematic theologies have. All right. Do you still only have that SMG?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me
Get some.
drop that for you. Let's see. Historically, systematic theologies, well, they come from a variety of vantage points and even have at times have different unifying themes. We've chosen as like our organizing systematic to stick with Burkhoff's. What do you think are the benefits of using Burkhoff for this kind of study? Oh.
Well, I mean, Burkhoff, he's a staple. He's a lot of people are going to be familiar with him. And he's going to be Orthodox for the most part. He's Dutch, so there will be perhaps some areas of disagreement since we're Scottish Presbyterians. We might have some areas of disagreement with him, but that's fine. But he's standard Reformed theology. So really, you're going to get a really good, solid Orthodox representation of Reformed doctrine from Burkhoff without having a whole lot of issues. So that's the reason why I would think it would be good. Familiarity, consistency, and good representation, good representative sample of what Reformed systematic theology and Reformed orthodoxy looks like.
I would agree with all of that. We're not going to be reading chapters of Burkhoff, so that'll also provide some like known material then for someone.
Oh man,
Where are you at?
I'm behind this tree. I'm not sure where that guy is shooting. Are you being shot at?
Yeah, I shot him too, so he was on top of this little hill.
Oh, I'm hoping he's dead. Oh, I'm getting shot at again. You would agree? You have any points of disagreement, or are you just going to add your...
Well, I was gonna say that since... Oh, run, little man. Since we won't be going chapter by chapter, there's a guy over here. It'll provide a good opportunity for someone who wants...
He's dead now.
Alright,
Oh, there's another guy.
I'm like almost down, so I'm kind of trying to avoid the fight. Since I don't have any advantages.
Well, I don't know where this guy went. Other than he's building all kinds of stuff.
if he's building, he's wherever he's building.
Yeah, but I'm not going to charge him because I'm not an idiot.
What you saying? So I have.
Oh, he got me. He's trying to get behind the tree, but it didn't work. You're providing covering fire, are you?
Something like that.
Alright. He's coming. He's coming. There'll be two of them. Oh, someone sniped me from somewhere.
No, I think it was when he eliminated me, it knocked you off. So it'll using Burkhoff and which is really just going to be a guide for us. It'll be a way of dictating what specific topic we address when we start our podcast. Which, by the way, people, this will be a podcast. And so if people wanted to kind of study along with us, they could read the whatever portion of Burkhoff that we would be covering, which will, in all honesty, cover it in more depth than we're going to have time to do. But another benefit to using Burkhoff is
Time or desire.
True. Another benefit to using Burkhoff is that he's modern in the sense of the language that he uses. And it's not to say that he uses all like little words, but there are a lot of people today that haven't read. We'll call it your King James English type of literature. And so with that, theologies like one of my favorites is Witsius's Economy of the Covenants. Let's see, we'll go to Retail Row. And one of the benefits then to using Burkhoff over Economy of the Covenants is the English is going to be more familiar to a modern audience. You'll still have your theological jargon that, I mean, you're going to find that in any resource, so away from that.
Right.
But, so we've covered the differences between systematic theology and biblical theology, and we have really affirmed that both have their uses, but for our use, systematic theology is better for what we're aiming to accomplish. There is a brief mention that we are going to have a podcast as part of that. So let's talk about that momentarily. Why do some like streaming and a little podcast portion?
Well, the podcast portion. All right, so if you're sitting here, we're doing this. We're playing the game, so we interrupt what we're talking about as we hit a particular moment in time in the game, right? And if you're trying to make your way through a head of doctrine, that can get hard if you make any significant progress if you do it that way all the time. So doing the actual podcast provides a format where we can be consistent, fulsome, we can treat the entire subject fully without interruption, and really delve into it and do it justice and do it service in a way that's helpful. So for me, that's the reason why the podcast portion exists, is to provide that, that helpful, fulsome discussion of what we're talking about. Now the question for you is, why the streaming? Because the streaming is, the game streaming, that's your baby. I could do podcasts without game streaming all day just because I'm an egghead, but why the streaming portion?
Well, Theology has, it can be very dry. You said earlier in a comment about how that's almost a way of saying it can be boring. By the way, there's a minigun up here if you want it. I would take it, but I already have one. And, not everyone is...
You there?
Yeah, I got a guy coming up.
Uh-oh. I'm not there to help you out.
Oh, man.
Death and destruction for Caleb, poor guy.
Oh, no, they haven't got me
I'm trying to
yet.
get there. Where are they?
One of them's down. They're reviving their buddy if you can run over.
Oh, I don't know where I'm running over to.
Well, where I'm at on your map. Okay, so the gaming portion is for those who are... Oh no! Leave me alone! This guy's like doing his little dances on me, but I knocked him out. The only reason he's up is because his partner got him up. So the streaming portion is to kind of cut the edge a little bit. They're on the other side of that wall where it's busted down on the left hand side. Both of them are there. Nice. It's a way of cutting. Nice.
Good shot. You're dead.
Nice.
Have a
dude.
seat.
Nice. So it's a way of cutting theology to make it a little more manageable for those who aren't as we'll say inclined towards it. I think there was a med kit over where the other guy died. There's some bandages at least. If you heal up with those and then place that fire down, it'll get you to 100%. So not everyone is going to be like thrilled about a theological discussion, but also as we discuss the various topics, what we're hoping is that this stream will provide a way for our listeners to join us and to ask questions that came to mind as they were listening to the podcast portion. So on the one hand, it's to help with the interest or the durability, you could say, for those who aren't theologically inclined. If you want to go inside to set the fire down. I would recommend building a wall behind you.
So what does the fire do?
It heals you. You can see your health going up. It's a campfire. So yeah, I'm hoping that it'll provide a way for us to have greater interaction with those who listen, and also for those who listen to have a weekly venue in which they can either like join us in game or comment on the podcast with a question, and we'll try to take up their questions. We may also have from time to time friends joining us who would either be participating in the discussion in either the podcast or the streaming, or be participating by way of asking questions. But we're not going to make any promises as to who would be doing that. It's a lot of
right.
that's a lot of convincing.
I
that
don't
we
have you.
to do.
Yeah, have you even lined anybody up yet? That's a big question.
No, not yet. I have a buddy who does some graphic design work, and we actually went to the same college. So I'm hoping that we would be able to arrange for him to join us. He's also the one who's doing our logo that will be coming shortly. So yeah.
How shortly? I'm eager for that YouTube channel to get up again, right? I'm antsing my pants. I've been looking and still seeing no content. When's this stuff gonna go up, man?
It should go up with this one. This will probably be the first one. It'll go up hopefully next week, like Monday or something.
You're not gonna have our first one be the first one?
Oh yeah. No, for that one I have to record the intro. Since I lost that as well.
Well,
times.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to the podcast part because that involves me not dying as much and looking as ridiculous.
Well, I mean, you're still gonna look
But
ridiculous.
the streaming part's gonna be fun too.
Yeah, for any who are watching us or who will be watching us, we do not claim the esteemed title of professional gamer. No, we don't do that. And you can tell why we don't do that, because, well, for my part, I'm dead right now.
Yeah, and the only reason I'm alive is because I'm out in the middle of nowhere, so not a whole lot of people out here with me.
Yeah, there's probably someone in that little base up there.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. I'm trying to think about shooting them. I don't see them. Here I am running in an open field. I better get some cover. Well, the interesting thing will be, so what do you have on the agenda for the first element of the podcast? I think if I was doing it, I'd be thinking about in terms of, all right, so if you look at a systematic theology, a lot of them, you got to pick a starting point somewhere, and a lot of them start with the doctrine of God. So I think in terms of the podcast, that will be an interesting discussion.
It will.
Where do we start in systematic theology, and why do we start there?
You know, for someone with the way he built, he's probably taking fire from the other direction. Switch your gun and run up on him. You can probably kill him. So there's been like two ways of doing theology as far as the systematics go. And that's to either start with the doctrine of God or the doctrine of Scripture. Berkhoff starts with the doctrine of God, so we'll be taking up that first. That'll be a fun discussion. We'll leave why start there for the podcast. But something else that we'll have to address is the issue of apologetics. That'll be particularly interesting because there's been some debate on, well, that's being posted on Facebook with regard to, is presuppositional apologetics reformed?
Oh yeah, I've been seeing that. That's hilarious.
It is.
Always something to argue about. Always something silly.
Yep.
To argue about within the reform camp for some folks. So yeah, that'll be interesting to address.
Yeah.
Perhaps a bit of a tease for the next episode. Huh?
Yeah. So that'll be fun. If you're curious as to what our take is on apologetics and apologetic methodology, is presuppositional method reformed or not reformed, you will definitely want to be tuning in to that first podcast episode.
Well, the interesting thing is going to be whether or not I'm going to die momentarily.
I'm going to vote yes. You see the other guy?
I'm going to vote. I'm going to hide. Yeah, I see them both.
You just shot at him. You can't hide now.
Yeah, I can. They're not coming for some weird reason. Is he coming for me? Nope.
Nope, but the circle is.
Rules. Crap.
Oh man, you got a lot of forts.
Yeah, I'm in trouble. I was just chilling out and enjoying it, watching the carnage, but apparently I'm not going to be allowed to do that. But I think as long as I get in the circle, I'll be alright. Well, I'm gonna get frisky. And see if I can accomplish something here.
Oh man.
People be dying, homie.
Yeah, pull your shotgun out. Find that guy who's firing those rockets. Oh, he's up. Go up that ramp.
Oh.
Whoa. What happened?
I don't know who I got blasted by, but I got blasted by him. I shot him though.
Yeah, dude, I was hoping you were gonna knock one of them. Yeah, so we've kind of given y'all a bit of a teaser. We hope that our lack of skill in our gaming won't deter you from tuning into the podcast, and perhaps this will be something that you can listen to Theology and have a good laugh at while you do. But we look forward to embarking on this journey and hope that y'all will come along with us. So until next time, we bid you farewell.